Last time, we left Earth breathing quietly. Trillions of microscopic cyanobacteria, drifting in shallow seas, releasing a strange gas into the water, a gas that, at the time, was pure poison. For over 1 billion years, the oceans and rocks soaked up that poison like a sponge. But sponges have a limit, and around 2.4 billion years ago, the sponge was full. What happened next was the single deadliest event in the history of life on Earth. Worse than any asteroid. Worse than any volcano. An invisible gas, the same gas you're breathing right now to stay alive, nearly wiped out every living thing on the planet, and as if that wasn't enough, that same event may have frozen the entire Earth solid, from pole to pole, not once, but possibly 4 separate times. This is the Proterozoic Eon, the era that almost ended life, and then built the blueprint for everything that came after, including us. For over 1 billion years, cyanobacteria had been quietly performing photosynthesis, releasing oxygen as a byproduct. But early Earth was full of oxygen sinks, iron dissolved in the oceans, exposed minerals on land, that chemically absorbed the oxygen almost as fast as it appeared. But around 2.4 billion years ago, those sinks finally became saturated. There was simply nothing left to soak up the oxygen. And so, for the first time in Earth's history, oxygen began pouring into the atmosphere. We call this the Great Oxidation Event, and calling it great is almost sarcastic, because for nearly every organism alive at the time, it was a catastrophe. Remember, the life that dominated Earth up to this point had evolved in a world with essentially zero free oxygen. To them, oxygen wasn't a life-giving gas. It was a corrosive poison, a molecule that ripped apart proteins and destroyed cellular machinery. Scientists sometimes call this the oxygen holocaust or the oxygen catastrophe, and by some estimates, it may have wiped out the vast majority of species living on Earth at the time. The first mass extinction in Earth's history wasn't caused by an asteroid. It was caused by pollution, biological pollution, generated by life itself. But extinction always creates opportunity. As oxygen levels rose, an entirely new kind of biology became possible, organisms that didn't just tolerate oxygen, but harnessed it. Aerobic respiration, using oxygen to release far more energy from food than ancient life ever could without it, was born. This new energy-efficient chemistry would eventually make possible everything from complex cells, to muscles, to brains. There's a strange, sobering irony here worth sitting with. The first mass extinction on Earth was caused by early life's own waste product. And yet, from the ashes of that catastrophe, life didn't just recover, it fundamentally upgraded, gaining access to a new, powerful source of energy that would make every complex life form possible. And this new oxygen didn't just change biology. It changed the sky itself. Before the Great Oxidation Event, Earth's oceans were rich with dissolved iron. As oxygen levels rose, it reacted with that iron the same way rust forms on an old nail. Massive amounts of iron oxide began precipitating out of the ocean and settling on the seafloor, layer by layer, over millions of years. Today, we can still see this event frozen in stone. They're called banded iron formations, striking, layered rock formations found on nearly every continent, alternating bands of red iron oxide and gray silica. Each band is essentially a geological receipt, a direct record of oxygen reacting with iron in the ancient ocean. Some of the richest iron ore deposits mined by humans today, feeding our steel industry, are literally fossilized evidence of the Great Oxidation Event. Meanwhile, up in the atmosphere, oxygen was undergoing another transformation. High-energy solar radiation split oxygen molecules apart, and some of those atoms recombined into a new molecule, ozone. Slowly, an ozone layer began to form in the upper atmosphere. This mattered enormously. Ozone blocks the sun's harshest ultraviolet radiation, the same radiation that had, until now, made dry land nearly uninhabitable. For the first time, Earth's surface was becoming just a little safer, though land would remain lifeless for over 1 billion more years, and the sky itself began to change color. With less methane haze and a new atmospheric chemistry, Earth's sky likely began shifting away from its ancient orange-brown tint towards something closer to the blue we know today. But this new, oxygen-rich, ozone-shielded planet was about to face a threat unlike anything life had experienced before, one triggered, ironically, by the very same gas that had just transformed it. Here's the twist that surprises most people. Oxygen doesn't just power life, it also destroys greenhouse gases. As oxygen flooded the atmosphere, it began reacting with and breaking down methane, one of Earth's most powerful greenhouse gases at the time. Methane had been helping keep the young, dim sun's Earth warm for over 1 billion years. Strip that blanket away, and you get a very cold problem. Around 2.4 to 2.1 billion years ago, in an event known as the Huronian glaciation, evidence suggests Earth may have frozen almost entirely solid, ice sheets potentially reaching all the way from the poles to the equator. Scientists call this hypothesis Snowball Earth. Picture it, an entire planet, encased in ice, possibly a mile thick in places, even at the equator. Average temperatures plummeting to -50 degrees Fahrenheit or colder. A white, blinding, frozen world, reflecting sunlight back into space so efficiently that it may have kept itself locked in an icy deep freeze for millions of years. This wasn't a one-time event either. Evidence suggests Earth may have frozen over this dramatically several times throughout the Proterozoic, including massive glaciations later on, around 720 to 635 million years ago, near the very end of this eon. So how does a fully frozen planet ever thaw out? Volcanoes. Even during a snowball Earth, volcanic eruptions continued, pumping carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. With ice sheets blocking the normal process that removes CO2 from the air, rain weathering exposed rock, carbon dioxide had nowhere to go. It just kept building. Slowly, over millions of years, enough greenhouse gas accumulated to overpower the ice, triggering an intense global thaw and a dramatic climate whiplash back to extreme heat. Remarkably, life survived this, likely clinging on in isolated pockets, volcanic hot springs, thin patches of ice-free ocean, or beneath the ice itself, where sunlight could still filter through in shallow areas. It's a stunning testament to the resilience of early life that a planet frozen pole to pole didn't end evolution's story, that if anything, this crisis seems to have accelerated it. Somewhere in this chaotic era of oxygen crisis and global ice ages, one of the most important evolutionary events in the entire history of life took place, quietly, at the cellular level, for over 1 billion years. Life had consisted of simple cells called prokaryotes, no nucleus, minimal internal structure, but now, a new kind of cell appeared, the eukaryote, a cell with a nucleus, and complex internal structures called organelles. The leading explanation for how this happened is one of the most elegant ideas in all of biology, endosymbiosis. At some point, a larger primitive cell engulfed a smaller oxygen-using bacterium, but instead of digesting it, the larger cell and the smaller bacterium formed a partnership. The smaller cell became a permanent internal power generator, evolving into what we now call the mitochondria, the energy-producing structures found in nearly every complex cell on Earth today, including every cell in your own body. This single merger was revolutionary. Mitochondria allowed cells to generate dramatically more energy using oxygen than ever before. And more available energy meant cells could afford to grow larger, build more complex internal structures, and eventually, evolve specialized parts. Around 1.2 billion years ago, evidence suggests these eukaryotic cells took an even bigger leap. Some began sticking together, cooperating, forming the first simple multicellular organisms. This wasn't just a bigger cell, it was cells working as a team, potentially specializing in different functions. This is the moment the biological building blocks for every plant, animal, fungus, and human, were finally, fully assembled. As the Proterozoic Eon drew to a close, roughly 635 to 541 million years ago, in a chapter known as the Ediacaran period, Earth's oceans produced something the planet had never seen before, the first recognizable animals. They were strange, nothing like anything alive today. Soft-bodied, often flat, some shaped like fronds, others like quilted mattresses or ribbed discs, gently anchored to the seafloor or drifting through shallow Ediacaran seas. Scientists call this collection of bizarre early life the Ediacaran biota. Creatures like Dickinsonia, an oval, ribbed organism that could grow over 1 meter long, have puzzled scientists for decades. Was it an animal? A giant single-celled organism? A completely separate branch of life that left no descendants at all? Remarkably, recent chemical analysis of fossilized Dickinsonia finally confirmed it contained cholesterol, a molecule found specifically in animals, settling a mystery that had lasted generations. These strange Ediacaran creatures were mostly gentle by later standards, filter feeders, or organisms simply absorbing nutrients from the water around them. There's little evidence of hunting, of predators, of the violence that would define life in the very next eon. It's often described as an ancient Garden of Eden, the calm before an explosion of complexity and competition that was about to reshape life on Earth forever. So think about everything that just happened. A poisonous gas nearly ended life on Earth, and then became the very fuel for complexity itself. A planet froze solid, more than once, and life survived anyway. Simple cells merged together and became complex ones. And finally, in quiet ancient oceans, the first true animals appeared. But the peaceful, gentle world of the Ediacaran wasn't going to last. Because 541 million years ago, something is about to happen that scientists call one of the most important turning points in the entire history of life, an explosion of diversity so sudden, so dramatic, that it gets its own name, the Cambrian explosion. Eyes are about to evolve for the very first time. Predators are about to appear. And the ocean is about to become a battlefield. That's where our next chapter begins, the Paleozoic era. If you want to see the moment evolution hit the gas pedal, when eyes, shells, claws, and predators suddenly appeared almost overnight, make sure you're subscribed, because part 4 is next.